working and what we can do to make the program as best as it can be. I just wanted to give everybody a heads up that we are going to be recording this for individuals who have not been able to attend today. So if there's any concerns with the recording, please feel free to hop off and we'll send you a link to the recording later on. All right, I'll be sharing the screen. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
All right, so very briefly, here's what currently happens in our justice system. And this is a broad generality, but it generally applies to anytime anybody is arrested. So we have an individual, he or she gets picked up in any jurisdiction. If there is a felony charge, that individual is processed directly in the jail booking. They go straight into custody. However, many of you are familiar with what we call the pre-booking modular. And what it is we have a modular building just outside of jail intake. And if an individual is arrested on a non-domestic violence misdemeanor, they have an opportunity to be screened and potentially released in that pre-booking modular there. And so for law enforcement, it's a great service. They're able to get folks potentially released from custody in about 15 to 20 minutes, which the booking process is quite lengthy these days, anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, depending on how busy they are and how much staff is there. So if they are able to get somebody released through the modular, it's a huge time savings for our law enforcement partners. When pretrial services staff receive somebody who is there in the modular itself, they'll look at them, their history to see how many open warrants or failures to appear they might have. If they have only a few warrants or a pretty minor history, they're able to be released right then and there, and they get information from pretrial services on when their next court date is going to be, where the court is at, and the individual is able to be released from custody right then and there. If for whatever reason that person is not eligible for pretrial release, then they are just like the felony bookings, go straight into custody and they'll await for their next initial appearance hearing there inside the jail. Of these 500 to 600 or so individuals that are taken to the pre-booking modular every single month, about half of those are released back to the community. So about 250, 300 or so individuals per month. So we have some pros and cons. The pros for the pre-booking modular, as I mentioned, it saves a ton of officer time. It's about 15 minutes or so to get somebody processed out of custody versus going through the booking process takes 3 or 4 hours. This has made a huge impact on reducing the amount of nonviolent, non-dangerous individuals with low-level charges from our jail population. About 7 years ago, our jail population was 20% misdemeanors. Now it's down to about 4 or 5%, given any time of the year. That's great. It means that our jail is being utilized more for individuals who present some risk to community safety. So it's more appropriate use of jail detention. And it saves a lot of time. There is a $422 charge for every individual that gets booked into the jail, and certainly takes a significant amount of corrections officer time, which is at a premium at the moment. And so being able to reduce that population, but also the time it takes to get somebody into custody is a huge benefit. However, we've heard some feedback from our community partners, those in law enforcement, those in businesses, those throughout the community have expressed concerns that individuals who are released that quickly are then back in pretty short order to wherever it was that they were arrested from in the first place. Obviously, that doesn't always happen, but for some individuals, we've heard anecdotal stories of folks being arrested multiple times in the same shift. And these individuals, while they're being released with information about their court proceedings and when their next court date's going to be. They may or may not have information on where they can get other services, resources, transportation. If they are unsheltered, they may or may not have access to housing for the night. They may or may not have access to transportation. And they may not have things like a cell phone that would make it that much easier to access those resources. So hearing that feedback from our community partners and our justice system partners, we came up with the concept of this transition center to try and help fill some of those gaps. So just a very brief overview of what we're hoping to accomplish. The transition center, it's not a treatment intervention. It is another modular. It's a second modular that's going to be right outside of the jail parking lot there. And the staff in that facility are going to provide connectivity to services, resources, information about increased access to treatment and transportation to some of the services that's available. We're also going to be collecting data to determine which of those interventions is the most effective. How we are measuring success for this program is we're going to be tracking a control population and determining if these interventions reduce rearrest or reduce the amount of time it takes until an individual has a law enforcement contact. And are we increasing the rate that these individuals will report to court? They will attend their court appearance. And that's the metrics around us measuring. Just a little bit about who has been working with us in this project. Pima County is the entity that has obtained the modular itself, and our facilities department is putting the whole thing together as we speak. Doyle was over there this morning meeting with our facilities folks who has joined the two pieces of the building together. Those of you who go to the jail, I encourage you to swing by and peek at it if you happen to be in the area. Our department here, the Department of Justice Services, is going to have oversight of the facility itself. And we are going to be hiring the Justice Navigator staff, which is going to be staffing the facility. We have a partnership with the city of Tucson in launching this project. The city is going to be contributing additional staff, Justice Navigator staff, to help expand our hours and availability. And we're going to be working with some of the other existing city teams to help provide differentiated response for individuals who are on our familiar faces list, meaning if they've been arrested multiple times or utilizing a lot of our services on a repetitive basis. Superior Court and Pretrial Services has been working with us throughout this entire process. We've been trying to coordinate all the processes around the existing court processes so that we're not inconveniencing or having unintended consequences in other aspects of the court system. We've been working with the jail staff, the corrections staff, to identify new processes and work ensure all of our efforts are as help and support to them with what they're doing. And we've been working with our justice system partners as well. So who are we targeting with this transition center? Our first objective is to engage with misdemeanors who have nonviolent, non-dangerous charges. So typically that means all non-domestic violence misdemeanors. These are the individuals who are currently going through that pre-booking modular and have an opportunity to be released before booking. It was identified that of that population, about 25% of all the individuals released on misdemeanors only ended up being rearrested within a month. And of that, the majority were rearrested within 1 week. So we felt like that was a great population to start with as far as who we were hoping to engage with and get services to. Once we've gotten the program up and running and we feel comfortable with our referral processes and our staffing model, we're going to start working with individuals who are getting released at initial appearance. That will include felonies as well. Typically, those will be substance use felonies, more minor property crimes, those low-level charges that we typically find associated with this population. We're also going to be, as I mentioned, doing a differentiated response with those familiar faces. So if we have folks who have been arrested a high number of times, we are going to do intensive wraparound services planning at those, if they are willing to do so, if they are willing to engage with this project. So how it's going to work, if you are familiar with the jail itself, this that slice there on the left is the jail intake area. I call them the Jurassic Park gates. If you're familiar with that spot, it literally looks like the gates of Jurassic Park. And when somebody is in custody, the law enforcement officer drives through the gates on the far left-hand side there. At the top, that existing the yellow block there with the building that's inside of there, that's the existing pretrial services modular inside that secured gate. The new modular is going into the red box that's on the lower right hand corner of that yellow box there. And so we're going to reroute some of our fencing, as Steve calls it, the exit through the gift shop model. So as individuals are getting released from custody, they will be routed through our modular on their way out to the community. And so that is that little slice right there along Silver Lake, if folks are interested in coming through. As they're being routed through the transition center, our Justice Navigator staff will attempt to engage with them. And it will look different depending on what is going on with that individual. Initially, we're going to try and just do those immediate needs. Do you have a place to sleep tonight? Do you need detox? Are you in crisis? Can we take you to the CRC? Can we take you to the MAC clinic? And also trying to incentivize them to participate voluntarily in the program by providing resources that they might need, like a cell phone and resource bags. So if they consent to participate in some services, we'll try and provide resources that are not only helpful to them, but also incentivizing to participate. We are requesting a county car so that we will be able to transport individuals and drop them off, which is why it's so important that we develop a list of providers who are willing to accept these drop-offs. And we'll follow up with individuals to ensure that they have a plan to get to their court hearings. And if they need assistance with transportation, et cetera, we're helping them to do that. So we have 3 core functions associated with the transition center. First and foremost is information and accessibility. We want to make sure that everybody who's coming out of custody understands what pretrial services has informed them with regarding their release conditions and those expectations. One of the biggest concerns that we've heard expressed by the community is individuals do not seem to be adhering to restrictions of area. So making sure that people understand that there are certain areas they cannot return back to as a condition of their release. We want to work with them to develop a plan to get to their court, and we want to provide as much information and resources as possible to promote that court appearance and reduce the probability that they're going to have future law enforcement engagement. Next, we want to connect them to all the services, treatment, and resources that they can possibly need or utilize. The feedback that we've gotten from a lot of our partners is that in many instances, individuals are willing or excited to engage in services, but they just didn't know how to go about it. And so whether they're willing to go with us at that point in time to a facility, to a service, or they're willing to accept a resource manual to take with them that they can follow up about afterwards. Either way, we want to make sure that we're loading folks up with as much information as possible and doing those more handoffs whenever folks are willing. And then finally, we're staffing the facility with justice navigators who have lived experience in the justice system. So individuals who have either gone through it personally or have a family member or a loved one, but who can really speak from their own personal experience, their insights that they've gained, what's worked for them, and be able to provide that support and encouragement that if they were able to make that life transformation, that the individuals that we're working with will be able to as well. So a little bit about what we do, what it is, and what it isn't. So it is informational. We want to talk about justice system processes. We want to be able to explain what's going to happen at your next court appearance, what's an initial appearance. And if they do have questions, where they can get more help, whether that be referring them to the public defender's office for that jurisdiction if they have one, maybe routing them back to their pretrial services case manager, whatever that might look like for that jurisdiction and that type of charge. We want to be connective, getting them enrolled in services, treatment, housing, and supportive. It is not a treatment program. We're going to be relying on the treatment providers, the treatment services that already exist. We want to be that conduit to care and connectivity. We can help provide transportation. We can get folks on the bus. We can look for resources. We're hoping to have additional grant funding that will provide things like taxis and cell phones, but it will not be a treatment program in and of itself. It is not community supervision. The navigators are not going to provide any kind of ongoing community. They're not going to supervise those participants in the community. They're not there to to enforce release conditions, or will they be reporting on non-compliance to pretrial services or the police department, unless, of course, there's some risk of dangerousness. And then finally, this is a voluntary program. Judges may, at some point in the future, ask individuals to participate as a condition of release. But as far as what we are doing, we are hoping to encourage participation, incentivize participation, but we cannot mandate that individuals participate in any of these referral services. So if you have been by the jail, you've seen the new modular. It got delivered a couple of weeks ago. It was in 2 pieces. We were very excited last week to see the 2 pieces are now 1. We got a construction permit implemented, and so Doyle was over there this morning and got a video of the inside of the facility, and we're getting the rundown on what we can and cannot do. We got our Justice Navigator system, our Justice Navigator positions posted a few weeks ago. We've had some great applicants and have already started doing interviews, but we do still have the position posted if you know anybody who might be interested in applying. And as we're doing all these things, we're building the plane as we fly it. So we're assembling the program, designing the program right now, and in the coming weeks. Next month, we are hoping that by early June, that we will have the modular itself construction finished. We'll have signs up, we'll have our fencing done that will start routing individuals through the modular on their way out of custody, that will have our navigators hired and training, and we'll have a pretty solid referral list of providers who are willing to accept individuals who have left the modular. In July, we want to really formalize that list of providers, refine all of our warm handoff protocols, launch that transportation service that we were talking about from the jail to those folks who are willing to take drop-offs. And then over the next 6 months, begin that evaluation component that I had talked about that determines whether we are doing is making a difference. We'd like to have everybody who's coming out of custody have a participant resource manual that will give them not only navigation on how the justice system works, but also how they can access housing, how they can access behavioral health, substance use, mental health services, whatever that might look like. And then finally, next summer, we'll be assessing the viability of the pilot program, looking to see what kind of impact it has made and evaluating whether we want to expand the program if it's been effective. Okay, that was one long run-on sentence. This is the modular itself here. We've been chuckling in-house that it looks a bit like the White Castle. The orange and the blue and the gray. Here's what we need from you all. We are trying to develop that resource manual. And so we have created a website. Exit out of this. Hopefully you are still seeing my screen. And so a link to this website is going to be dropped in the chat here. It has a little bit about our transition center. If you click on this link right here, it will actually take you to our Justice Navigator posting if you want to read a little bit more about that position and see more information about that. And today is the community service providers meeting. We'll have a copy of this PowerPoint presentation available here through this link. The link actually goes to the Teams meeting. And we are having and there's also going to be, if I reload it, maybe it'll show up. Yay, okay, so what we are hoping you all will do after we finish our meeting here is provide some information about what services you have available, what you're interested in doing. It might take, for you, it might be just working with whatever your existing program already is, and that's great by us. Or if you're really interested in making a big impact with this population and you want to meet with us to do a preferred provider, develop some special referral pathways or processes, please let us know. Like I said, this is all very fluid. We are tinkering with what's going to be the best possible model and are trying to get as much information and connectivity as we can. So I hope you will come submit some of the information here. We are going to have a little bit additional information. We'd like to know what your hours of service are, if you're willing to accept drop-offs, if you are willing to take individuals on evenings and weekends. We'd like to know a little bit more about what the service are that you have, that you're willing to provide, whether it be housing, treatment, vocational, or other services. That is the basic summary of where we're at for the moment with the transition center. What questions do folks have? What can we answer for you? I see Luther's got his hand up.
Yeah, I have two questions. The first is, do you have any idea what incentives you're thinking of providing, and could your participants offer those as well, instead of just getting involved? Maybe incentives could be another thing that your partners could be willing to provide as well.
That's a great question and a great suggestion embedded in there. We are hoping initially to utilize some cell phones that we have from a grant that we have already received. And we're working on who would get a cell phone under what conditions, but the phones come with 3 months of service, and one potential incentive could be for continued participation. Individuals would get additional months of service added on. We are looking at applying for a SAMHSA grant, and one of the things that the SAMHSA grant has, for those of you who have a SAMHSA grant, I can't believe I'm voluntarily signing up for this, but the GPRAs, and GPRA, if you complete GPRA's assessments, there is some incentives that can go associated with that. We're looking at all options. So if folks have, incentives that they would be willing to contribute or recommend, we'd be very interested in getting all the suggestions that are out there. We are also, we have something called resource bags that we've been putting together for the last couple of years during the pandemic. They include things like socks, blankets, first aid kits, PPE, toiletries, and resource manuals. And it's our hope, if folks are willing to do an interview or assessment or get transported services, that we can utilize those resource bags as an incentive as well.
Okay, all that sounds awesome. The other question is, are you looking to get feedback from the people who participate to find out maybe why it is they aren't returning? I mean, maybe you already know the answers and you don't need that information, but I'm just wondering if you're going to collect that as well.
That is a great idea, and I will make sure that we note that for our team and we can include that in our follow-up, because I would be curious to note that as well. I know that there's been other work already happening in the space. The Tucson Police Department, City of Tucson, and CIRO, the Southwest Institute for Research on Women, they actually did a recent survey among the unsheltered population in Tucson, and I think asked a lot of the questions that you were looking at, Luther. I know that the results of that project, I think, are supposed to come out next month, so they have a
Okay.
lot of questions in that space as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I got a question here in the chat from Amanda, who says, how will the discharge planners at PCADC be incorporated into this program? And again, a great question. Initially, we're going to be working with the folks who never walk it through the doors. And so these are individuals who did not get the benefit of the PCADC discharge planners. That's why we're targeting this misdemeanor population, because they have very limited services. They're seeing pretrial services. Pretrial services is providing some information and referral, but there's very limited engagement after that. As time goes by, if we find this model is effective, if we're seeing promising results, then we'll be working with the existing correctional staff to try and fill gaps. Our objective with this program is to not duplicate efforts. It's not to reinvent the wheel or add on to what other folks are doing. It's to fill in the gaps where something isn't happening. So if we find through these processes that there's the service or resource or engagement is happening elsewhere, then we'll try and just refer to those services rather than providing them ourselves. Other questions? Ken.
I don't necessarily have a question, but an offer from the GMI Grants Management Innovation Research and Analysis Department to be a part of the conversation as it sounds wonderful, the program evaluation that you're planning on doing, and would love to be a part of helping that come to reality. So if there's a place for us, would be love to be a part of that conversation. And part of it comes from my own interest, and part of it comes because it's this coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funding that is helping support some of this. So that's a mouthful, I know, but we're here to be of assistance as you find that needed.
That's excellent, Ken. Yes, evaluation is factoring very heavily into this project. We are hoping, so we work very closely with our analytics and data governance department here in the county. And what we're hoping to do is integrate a lot of the research that we're doing here with our existing jail data feed, so that we can have a much better concept about what the history of these individuals look like before they came through the modular, and we can better identify if there's any behavioral changes that come about afterwards. So thanks, Ken. We'll definitely be reaching out to you. Jennifer had in the chat. Hi, Jennifer. It's good to see you here. She says she understands the modular is not set up as a treatment site, but is there any plan for hiring a nurse? An RN may help with general health needs, connection to medications, etc. Some folks may be more likely to accept help from an RN. That's another great suggestion. We don't have any plans currently, although the county, this is only going to be one piece of what we know has to be a much bigger puzzle. And one of the things that the county, along with the sheriff's department, the jail staff, health staff, they're looking at the needs around medical, around detox, around individuals who may have used substances, particularly fentanyl, very recently. And that has been very much a part of a larger conversation. How are we going to be engaging with these folks who have all these medical and substance use complications, and where can we provide the best level of service around that? So the modular itself is very, very tiny. I don't think the picture really does it much service, because once you factor in some bathrooms into that facility, there is not a whole lot of space left over. That was part of our initial conversations was, do we have room to have treatment providers embedded there in the facility? Do we have room to have some co-location? And once we saw the size of the actual modulars, we realized it would be very, very cozy and that we would be better served trying to refer folks out for services. So we'll definitely continue to work on having a medical component integrated into this work. I see Keith's hand up, and then I'll go to Michael's question. So Keith, good to see you. Oh, you're on mute. Keith, if you can hear me, you're on mute right now.
Sorry. Yeah, I talked to you about this before. Maybe you could explain a little bit about the transportation needs for getting people from the modular to the services that they need.
Absolutely. So we have requested a county vehicle that we would be able to do short range transport. And so our plan is to have 2 folks in the modular at all times so that one can assist with transportation. And that's always the biggest thing that we hear from folks is we're happy to receive services, we're happy to receive individuals, but we can't come and get them, we can't transport. And so we've been trying to bake that transportation component into our model because we know it's so difficult to identify elsewhere. And so it's our hope that we'll be able to use a county vehicle to transport individuals to a MAT clinic, the CRC, CBI, their health homes, whatever that might look like. The other thing that we, as I mentioned, we're hoping to have letters of commitment, letters of support from our treatment system partners so that we can go after this SAMHSA grant. The SAMHSA grant, we are including transportation services in that as well. So we know that it's often difficult to get an individual to court or to that drug testing department or whatever that might look like. And so for those of you who've been working with our department for a while are familiar with what we call the CARS program. And that has a AAA taxi service program that you can set up that transport and have that person go where they need to go. So while we're taking folks away from the jail, we also want to make sure that we're baking in a component that can get folks to court, get folks to treatment or whatever their follow-up services are. Michael, in the chat, Michael says, how might one best book a one-on-one meeting to discuss resource offering before completing the service provider form? I am, Doyle, will you put your and my email addresses here in the chat? Just shoot us an email. We would love to talk more. Other questions? Points of consideration? So Veronica says Banner has a community reinvestment program. Providers can apply to help receive money to help fund any of their programs that benefit the community, not Banner member specific. The applications will be starting in September. That's awesome, Veronica. Thank you very much for sharing that. Very interested in looking at that.
Yeah, just wanted to share that with you because we've had some providers who have applied with a justice bent. And so I think this would be great for any providers who partner up with you on the in working with the transition center.
Excellent, thank you.
I also wanted to ask you, and you might have answered this, I'm sorry if I missed it. What kind of data are you going to be collecting?
So it's not clinical data. We're going to be looking at justice data. However, it is our intention to track where people are being referred to so that we can determine if there are better outcomes associated with different types of referrals. So that's our objective, but we do not want to be drifting into that treatment as much as we can avoid that. We want to be that conduit to treatment without having too much information around that. So, but we will be looking at court appearance rates. We will be looking at rearrest rates. And Doyle put his email address in there. Thank you for correcting. Yeah, mine's in there too. Jennifer wants to know, can you say more about who would be involved in the Familiar Faces collaboration and what partners would be involved? So the Familiar Faces Initiative is a national project. If you go to the National Association of Counties, they actually have a website. And it is designed to target individuals who have high utilization, not only the jail or arrested frequently, but are also frequently in emergency departments, crisis centers, and those other high cost, high utilization services. And each community handles it a little bit differently. What we're working with, we're partnering right now with the Community Safety, Health, and Wellness Department at the City of Tucson to both identify individuals who have a frequent utilization of those services, but also understand better what each person needs. And so one person might have a lot of misdemeanor charges, they might be unsheltered, and so their resolution might be a Compass Court referral and getting them into permanent supportive housing. Another individual might have very low justice system utilization, but they're at the CRC every other day. And so who is involved will depend on what services that person is utilizing and what is missing from that engagement. So we would do our best to, once we identify individuals, try and identify which services they're connected to. So it could be, like I said, the public defender's office, certainly for folks who have felonies. It's going to be a lot more misdemeanors simply because those are the folks who get arrested more frequently, and trying to work with whatever resources we can possibly pull to the table to try and problem solve. CJ says, can you please put the link to the website in this chat? Yes, we can. Although CJ, I noticed that the updated thing is not in there quite yet. So I was holding off on putting the link in there until the updated questions were there. I'll do one more plug. We are really hoping to get letters of support for this SAMHSA grant that we are hoping will help support this project. We're looking for basically these letters of support are that you are willing to accept referrals within your existing line of business. So you don't need to come up with anything new or reinvent the wheel. We are hoping to find individual agencies, treatment providers, housing providers, service providers that says, yes, we have these services already. We are licensed, credentialed, whatever it is that you might be. And we are willing to accept referrals from the Transition Center Project. We have a stock letter of support that we would just have some quick modifications. If you would be willing to fill out one of those letters, we would appreciate it tremendously. So please shoot me and Doyle an email and we can send that draft letter of support over to you. And I want to highlight the chat too. We have several of our friends in the health department. There is a mobile vaccine clinic that is available. They have some telemat clinic services for rapid start Suboxone. And so please, if you are in that space, take a look, and we certainly will be writing those resources down for our referral business too. So thank you both very much. Any other questions? All right, I am dropping a link to the chat. Nope, that is a overview of the, okay, so here is the link to the website that I just pulled up with the ability to fill out an informational form. Talk to us about your hours of operation, who you can receive, who is appropriate for your services, if you have insurance requirements or there's a cost associated with it, what hours of operation, all of that good stuff. Let us know all the things, and we will be following back up with you. Any other questions? Well, I will thank you all very much for your time today. This is just going to be one step in what we hope is a very exciting program and project. We will be continuing to update you all, so please make sure you sign up for updates there in that website. The link, there's a sign up for updates there. We'll be keeping you posted on big milestones and be constantly seeking your input and feedback so that we can continuously tweak the program to make the best possible project that we can. Thank you all very much for your time today, and we'll be in touch and hopefully a lot more conversations to come.
Thank you.
Very exciting, Kate. Thank you.
Thank you, friend.